J Dilla's music has an incredibly unique feel to it. As soon as you hear a Dilla beat, you know it's him. And there are a lot of elements at play here. The samples he used, the way he chopped things, odd bar loops, and more. But the most commonly talked about aspect of J Dilla's production is his drums. But there's a big misconception about Dilla's drums that we need to talk about. Today we're diving all the way into Dilla's Timefeel, going through the entire history of recorded music, recreating grooves along the way, and in the process of debunking one misconception, we'll see how Dilla's contribution to music is even bigger than you think. It's not an exaggeration to say that Dilla's drums and Timefeel changed the course of history. There was straight feel, swing feel, and now Dilla Feel. This led to him not only getting more work as a producer, but also lots of other people copying his style, either directly through producers or indirectly through drummers. Questlove was blown away when he first heard a Dilla beat because it was unlike anything he had ever heard of, and it went against every convention he had as a drummer. Dilla's Feel is what he and D'Angelo bonded over, which led to the formation of the Soulquarians, a collective which included Dilla, and a string of classic albums that have their own influence on music today. Okay, but what did Dilla actually do to his drums? Why do they sound the way they do? What is Dilla Time? Well, Dilla Time is an incredible book by Dan Charnas breaking down J Dilla's life, legacy, and impact on music. It's been a crucial source of multiple videos of mine, and we're going to talk about one specific section and recreate it later in the video, but before that, let's talk about Dilla's Timefeel. What's so unique about his drums? There are a lot of different Dilla beats. Not all of them utilize this technique, but what people most often refer to when they're talking about Dilla drums is the fact that all the elements of the drum kit don't line up perfectly. A common example of this is the rushed snare. By rushing the snare slightly, it doesn't line up with the kick or hi-hat and makes the whole beat feel, well, wrong to some people, but incredible for other people. Because of this rushed snare and disjointed drum feeling, this has led to the biggest misconception about J Dilla, that he simply turned off the quantization on his MPC and went by feel alone. While that's true in some cases, that's not the full story, and it gets so much bigger and better than that. There are certainly times when he did turn off quantization. By all accounts, when he made the beat for Runnin' by the Far Side, or rather remade it, he played the kick pattern in by hand with no quantization. But that's already in another video. Erykah Badu's Didn't You Know doesn't line up with the grid, so that's probably also played in by hand, but that's a different video too. For this video, we're gonna see how Dilla actually did use quantization, but used it in a unique way, which is a huge part of the signature Dilla Feel. We're gonna go all the way back through the entire history of recorded music to talk about production styles. I got a drummer coming in, I'm gonna play bass, I'll DJ, I got an MPC, and after seeing the evolution of time feels through hip-hop over the last 50 years, we'll circle back to Dilla Time and recreate a Dilla beat. You ready? We're gonna start at the beginning of recorded music. Actually, before that. For thousands and thousands of years, music was an exclusively in-person experience. You had to go see an orchestra, or know someone who owned a piano or folk instrument or whatever. Or, just go listen to someone singing while they walk down the street or whatever. The point is, it was made by humans live in the moment. So when music began to be recorded in the late 1800s, the idea was to replicate a live performance as faithfully as possible. They did this by just recording a live performance. There were no overdubs, no fancy production, no computers or anything like that. You've got a live band and they're going straight onto the record. Music production continues to evolve and you get things like overdubs, miking things individually, etc. You've got landmark experimental records along the way. In the 70s and 80s, you start working with synthesizers, etc. But there's one big musical innovation that wasn't yet standard at that point: recording to a click track. Most modern music is recorded to a click track, or a metronome for my classical people. That means every element of the recording is centered around a perfect grid. You know what, this is gonna be easier if I give you a visual example. Here's a piece of graph paper. This was printed by a machine and it's the perfect metaphor for this. This graph paper is modern music. Anything you hear on the radio now, and most of the stuff you listen to that's been made recently, is plotted out on this. Remember in school when you had to plot out points on a graph and connect them with a line or whatever? This is basically how modern music is made. You've got a piece of graph paper, you plot out your points, and then you take the paper away because we don't hear click on the final recording, and voila! You've got a piece of recorded music that was perfectly plotted on graph paper. It's clean, it's nice, it's incredibly accurate. Let's plot out a simple curved line on this graph paper. So what I'm gonna do for this example is I'm gonna put our graph paper here into a sheet protector, You'll see why in just a second. All right, let's just do a simple pattern here. Let's start here. Let's go up 1 over 1 for maybe 5, 2, 3. Down 1 over 2. Then let's go up again. Now let's just connect these. But since the click isn't heard in the final recording, we're gonna take the graph paper out and replace it with a blank piece of paper so we can see how it turned out. Yeah, that's a nice line. Let's label this one click track. Zoom in on the, ooh! But how music used to be made for thousands of years, and even the majority of recorded music is without click. Now, that doesn't mean there's no grid at all, it just means that the grid is essentially being hand-drawn by musicians in the moment. That's what groove is, that's what a pocket is, and this is the key to playing with other musicians live. As a bass player, I'm drawing out my own grid, my own feel for how the song should go. When I'm playing with a drummer, they're doing the same thing. When we're playing together in the same room, in the same moment, we can both adjust our groove grids in real time to adapt to each other. To show an example of this, I got together with my friend Mario Montes. We're both in the same room in the same moment, there's no click, so we're both working together to create a live drawn groove grid. If you were to draw out our groove grid, it might look something like this. Oh man, that's not straight. Check it out. Not bad, not bad. It's definitely not a perfect grid. Can we get the zoom on that, zoom comparison? Now I'll draw that same curved line from the first example, but on this hand-drawn grid. All right, there we go. Oh, geez, there it is, huh? This episode brought to you by Staples, am I right? It's not sponsored. All right, now let's take out our human grid, see what the final song feels like. Now compare this to our click track. This is the same graph, but different grids. This one is made by a computer, and this one is made by musicians live in the moment. This one's close, but not perfect. Maybe we pushed the downbeat forward or back a bit, but then corrected that a moment later, but these are micro moments. The tiny subdivisions of the beat may shift a little bit, but overall the thing feels good. Different drummers and bass players have slightly different feels, but Mario and I have played together a lot, so we have a good understanding of what the other person plays like. We can adapt to each other in the moment. We're pretty good at making one of these groove grids together, and while it may not be 100% accurate, overall the music feels pretty good. This is how music was made for a very long time. The funk and soul music of the 60s and 70s wasn't recorded to click. They're making their own groove grid like this, and that's why all that old stuff feels so good. It's entirely human driven. So hip hop begins in the early 70s and it's built on these recordings. DJ Kool Herc notices that the drum break is the most exciting part of these records, so he wants to keep the groove going. Other DJs like Grandmaster Flash build on this, looping drum breaks entirely manually. 2 turntables, 2 copies of the record, a crossfader in between. Play the 8-bar drum break over here, then cue up the same 8 bars over on this side, switch over to this one. While this one's playing, you gotta manually rewind this one over here before the end of this one, and then switch back to this one, rewind, etc., etc. Here's a drum groove Mario played without click. I'm gonna see if I can loop it in the same way. Alright, I'm not like super great at this, but let's give it a shot. Woo! Nope. On modern DJ equipment, you've got cue points and loop functions, which make this way easier, but back in the day, you had to manually crank back the record and do it quick enough so you wouldn't miss the transition. So if we're talking about groove grids, this would be like taking a section of the hand-drawn grid and playing that over and over. But there's another variable here, the human touch on the turntable. That's not quantized, so in addition to the groove grid of the musician on the original recording, you've got slight variations for when the loop starts. On some hip-hop recordings, you can hear this idea play out. There's some loops that are slightly imperfect, and because the sampler's looping it, it plays that slight unevenness every time. This gives the music of hip-hop a very unique feel. You're taking a specific moment in time with a specific feel, specific grid, and looping it over and over in a new way. It's that same slightly imperfect moment repeated, sometimes imperfectly. We'll talk about this more in a second. However, the first hip-hop top 40 single, Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang from 1979, wasn't a sample. It was re-recorded by a live band, so back to the hand-drawn grid. There's another distinct style of early hip-hop production that utilizes drum machines, like Africa Bambaata's Planet Rock from 1982 or Run DMC's Sucker MCs from 1983. Outside of hip-hop, artists like Michael Jackson and Prince use drum machines. Of course, house and techno are built on drum machines too. Models like the Roland 808, the Oberheim DMX, and the Lindrum sweep the 80s. The drum machine is a standalone instrument and it plays a beat to a perfect grid. Think like our modern graph paper analogy. This machine is spitting out a perfect drum beat, absolutely accurate. These machines use the onboard sounds to create beats and became their own iconic sonic signature. For example, here's the beat from Planet Rock recreated on an 808. This created a whole era of machine-driven music that's plotted out on perfect graph paper. Right now you're probably like, man, is it just graphs from here on out? But I promise, it's gonna get really good. Going back to sample-based beats, in the late 80s and early 90s, you get the release of samplers like the SP1200, which allows users to make a drum beat, but record their own drum samples in. Now you're no longer limited to the 808 sounds. You could use a kick you like from one song, plus a snare from a different song, or combine longer samples to manipulate and loop. For example, songs like Excursions by A Tribe Called Quest utilize a new technique, multi-layered sampling. This song uses a slowed down sample of upright jazz bass with a sped up sample of drums from a completely different record. These two songs were recorded by different people in different parts of the country on completely different songs 3 years apart. In other words, these are completely different hand-drawn grids that have been made to overlap on each other. To show an example of this, I recorded a bass line on my own, and I'm going to make it match up with Mario's drum groove from earlier. Let's make these two grids overlap. All right, so here's this one. One tempo. Over here, here's the bass. Lot slower. So I'm gonna slow this one down, speed this up, let's see what we can do. A little faster. Ah! At the end, I don't know what I was doing on the bass, but all right, I've messed with it a little bit and I got it pretty close. Now these two recordings do line up together, almost perfectly, but not quite. The subtle differences in how Mario and I drew our grids is where the magic is. That slight rub is the result of bringing two completely separate recordings together. If you compare that to when we were playing in the same room, it's totally different. Of course, we're playing a different groove, but the slight disagreement of the overlapping groove grids is the key here. This technique is still human-driven, it's two people making music together, but in a brand new way that wasn't previously possible because of a machine. Alright, here's Mario's drums, he recorded this no click at one tempo. Now, here's my bass recorded, also no click, completely different tempo, different time. Let's see what happens. See if we can make these both work. Woo! There we go, getting close. There's still like a little bit of disagreement, but where's the least amount? Like maybe right there? This is what I'm talking about. This is the magic. And then came the Akai MPC-60 and following models. This machine further blurred the lines between drum machine and sampler, taking the combination of human and machine-driven music to a new level. The MPC allowed you to record your own samples in, and it even had 16 performance pads so you could play in the beat you want directly. These 16 pads have become iconic and are still part of the MPC today. Now, here's the thing about playing in a beat. You might not do it perfectly, so there's a feature on the MPC called timing correct, commonly called quantization. This is essentially musical rounding. You play in the beat you want, and the machine would lock everything to the grid for you. Maybe this hit was a hair early, or this one was just barely late, but now they're both perfectly in time. You can specify how finely tuned this gets, like should it be rounded to the closest 8th note or 16th note, or you could also add a slight swing to it. When you swing, it makes the grid uneven, but regularly so, shifting the swung 8th note of the entire beat slightly. There's consistency to it, an expectation, and all of the notes you play line up with that expectation. Got a swing grid here somewhere. For example, here's a swung grid. As you can see, some of these lines have been shifted over, but consistently so. I'm gonna need more marker colors. My stationery budget for this video is insane. Okay, I haven't used orange yet. Here's our quantized swung grid. By comparison, here's our quantized straight grid. Whether it's straight or swing, quantizing is a crucial part of modern music. This allows for people who don't happen to be great at tapping in a beat, get close enough, and the machine takes it from there. It's like drawing the curved line on a blank piece of paper first, and then the machine snaps it to the grid for you after. While samplers like the SP1200 had quantization features like this, the MPC took it to another level, allowing for incredibly precise adjustment, not only correcting timing, but stretching and shifting the timing of individual musical elements independently. But while the MPC could do that, no one really did, because why would you want to? Why would you want different quantization settings on different elements in the same song? Shouldn't it all be locked to the same uniform grid? Enter J Dilla. Dilla's biggest musical innovation was his all-new Timefeel, but the big misconception is that he just simply turned off the quantization and played everything in by hand. Like I said, sometimes he did play stuff in by hand, and the MPC is great for that. But as Dilla Time clearly explains, this isn't the full story. Some Dilla beats use quantization, just not in the way that it had ever been used before. This is where it gets really good. In Dilla Time, Charnas lays out the beat for Go Ladies by Slum Village, showing the grid and comparing it to where human drummers would place the snare and where Dilla's snares are. Look, it's right there. I'm gonna have to like scan this. I asked Mario to play the same beat, but to play it straight. Everything locked to the grid that he would traditionally create as a drummer. Mario's a great drummer. That beat feels great, but it doesn't feel like Dilla. Now let's sample the individual hits of Mario's drum kit, plug it into an MPC, and see what we can do. Let's take a listen to that. That wasn't perfect. That's not bad, but it's not as good as Mario. So what I can do is do timing correct here. Let's quantize the whole thing to eighth notes and see how that feels. All right. Yeah, that's exactly perfect. Like Mario's version was all human-based. This is his samples, but it's machine-based. Now let's do what Dilla did and quantize each of those elements slightly differently. We'll leave the kicks where they are, but we'll put a slight swing on the hi-hats. And then we'll take the snares, and I'm gonna quantize that as far over as you can go. 64th note. Put a little bit of swing on it. But while that doesn't change the placement of it, what you can do is I can take this whole row of snares here and nudge it just a little bit over. So they're gonna be just a little early, the hi-hat's a little swung. Let's hear how that sounds. Now the whole thing has a new lilt to it, a new unevenness to it. The whole thing is swinging back and forth, and it's consistent. It does correct itself, but it's a brand new feel that all the previous examples of drums we've heard didn't have that. The song also has claps and bass and lots of other stuff on it, but at its core, this is what the drums are doing. And because this is a machine, it can keep doing that indefinitely. This is something that would be incredibly difficult for a human drummer to do, and even if they could emulate it, it goes against every instinct a drummer has, so it's incredibly difficult to continue doing that through an entire song. What J Dilla is doing with a beat like this is combining all of the production methods we just went through and rolling it into something brand new that was previously not possible. He's using sampled kicks and snares and other musical elements made by humans and playing them on the MPC using his hands, but then he's using the machine to change the whole thing and snap it to an intentionally imperfect grid. In the same way that multi-layered sampling brought together two different overlapping feels on top of each other. Remember this? Dilla's taking that same concept and applying it to different elements of the drum kit, creating a brand new feel that would otherwise be impossible. Going back to the graph paper, this particular grid is printed by a machine, so it's clean and consistent, but each row is completely different. That's how you get this great image laid out in Dilla Time. Straight, swung, Dilla Time. By the way, this book was just released in paperback, so you have no excuse now. Go buy it. If you were to expand this out to a full sheet of graph paper, it would look like this. Zoom in on that. Final result. Let's get rid of the grid, see how that looks. Here's our original perfect grid. Here's Dilla. Here's our swung grid. Here's Dilla. Here's our musician's no-click grid. Here's Dilla. Here's our multi-layered sampling. Here's Dilla. This is the big misconception about J Dilla. Not only was he not anti-quantization, he took quantizing to a completely new level, combining many different production styles, human elements, machine elements, samples, and additional layered instruments to create music that had never been heard before and wasn't even possible to make up until that point. It's part human, part machine, and all new. All Dilla. Dilla's Timefeel had a massive impact on hip-hop production, R&B, music production as a whole, and drummers everywhere. But like I said at the beginning, sometimes he did play stuff in by hand, like in the case of Runnin' by the Far Side. That kick pattern is amazing and also kinda all over the place, so much so that it caused a literal fistfight. And for that story, you gotta watch this video.